The final Champions Day match day, that was the kind of night that football fans dream of, well, especially if you're a Barcelona fan. Needing a win to seal their destiny in the top 8, Barca got punched early, adjusted, and then absolutely ran Copenhagen off the pitch to be flying high into the round of 16. And things didn't necessarily work out well for some of Barcelona's greatest rivals. Isn't necessarily a bad thing for Culers, but we'll get into that later. Because welcome to episode 775 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and usually I talk really, really fast, but I do want to slow myself down just for a second here and say thank you. A big, big, big thank you, not only to Francesc Tomas, who 9 years ago, we started this podcast. 11 years ago, I started writing for him. And all of 16 years ago, he started Barca Blog and this whole journey. So thank you so, so much. I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry about anything like that. This isn't a goodbye. But I just want to say thank you to all the guests, Francesc, and everybody that helped me get to this point. But most importantly, I want to thank the audience. Francesc and I started this show as an audio podcast 9 years ago, not knowing if anybody would listen, if anybody would care. We kept doing it, and why I always tell people, I've met people from the club, and they ask me, well, how did you get into this? And I say, well, because Francesc and I started this show, and way more people cared about what we thought than I ever expected. And it's been so great to watch this community grow and relationships that aren't affiliated with me grow in this community. And again, thank you to everybody that's been ever a guest on the show, but also most importantly to the audience to help me get to 100,000 subscribers. That is a number that I never thought imaginable. And that is just on video. That is just the YouTube channel. So thank you so, so much to 100,000 subscribers. And I'm going to see if I continue to push the envelope here with things like BigUp, where you can join me on Saturday for that watch along against Elche. And for joining me in the chat and talking with me with the prediction games has also been a huge bit of fun. So I wanted to start this show with a little bit of sentimentality, but now it's time to get into excitement. Very rarely do you hear me talk with so much energy, because if I did, I would be going 100 miles an hour, but I'm going to have to try to keep myself calm today because yes, I'm excited about 100,000 subscribers, but I'm so excited about Barcelona not only finishing in the top 8, but finishing 5th in what was an awesome game as other results went crazy in the background. Let's get into 5 headlines for Barcelona's 4-1 win over Copenhagen. Headline 1 is Danish Destruction. I want to take you to a few hours ago, and just 5 minutes into this match against Copenhagen, this was not looking like Barcelona's night at all. Jules Koundé, we can talk about his form. I bet most people are going to be negative in the comments. He did turn around for the second half, but no, the first half was really rough for Jules Koundé, and you'd hope that Hansi Flick, having walked him down the tunnel, this is an interesting note, having walked him down the tunnel at halftime, I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation, because he makes a mistake here on the first goal, overcooks the pass to Eric Garcia, who could have done better in receiving it, but he gets tackled by Dadison, the 17-year-old for Copenhagen. One pass through the middle, and Dadison scores past Joan Garcia. The high line, and Kubarsi could not step in time to get him offside, but this is less about the high line and more about this mistake from Koundé, because the high line didn't have time to react to this, and Barcelona now down 1-0. The most frustrating part of the beginning of this match was that Barcelona were being pressed high, and they had another opponent that was willing to work hard against them. And it felt like that's all it took for them to be standing on thin ice. And on the other side, it felt like some of the unlucky misses that they've had in recent matches was continuing as well. Barca had a chance on a mistake in the 10th minute, an error at the back that Lewandowski jumped on, but the keeper got a deflection and the defender saved it. A minute later, Eric gets a deflected shot on goal, but Katarski reads it well and represents himself with a punch away. 15th minute, it's another one for Barcelona. Lewandowski, a through ball for Raphinha, but he couldn't control it for a shot. And I will say, throughout all of that, there was some sloppy passing from the likes of Koundé, from Olmo, from Eric, from Balde. Fermin was looking completely lost. He had 0 touches in the opposition box in the first half, which I guess you'd say he was the 10, but even as one of your high right interiors, just is not going to lead to a lot of success. And Fermin, defensively at least, he was supporting Lamine Yamal, who started this game awesome. Lamine Yamal, from start to finish, was the best player on that field. And his passing in the first half, I mean, he must have been looking at his teammates in halftime saying, can someone do something with what I'm delivering here? It was really, really special from the kid. 34th minute, Eric off the underside of the crossbar with a rocket of a shot. Luck just not there yet for Barcelona, but looking to make their own luck. 37th minute, another bunch of chances. Lamine Yamal flicks it over the top. Lewandowski can't bring it down. Lamine Yamal's shot on the rebound is blocked, and he got a yellow for dissent after that, but I wasn't worried about him. And then closing out that half, the 40th minute, I had a note that Raphinha had a lung-busting run, making up for Gerard Martin and Eric Garcia getting bypassed, because in transition, maybe it was just the exuberance of youth from the 17-year-old Dadison, Gerard Martin and Eric Garcia looked a little bit slow against Dadison in the middle there. Headline 2 is all about rest defense. I know it's a boring thing, and I know some people get bored by the tactics, but don't be bored, because this match flipped on its head at halftime with, I guess to say, a slight difference, but it was really a big difference that changed this entire game. And for that, we need to go where we haven't gone in a few weeks now, and that's the tactics board. When we talk about lacking Pedri, his rest defense is some of the best in the world. Again, it's a boring point, but when Barcelona are attacking and then the other team is able to clear it, or they take possession in their own third and they try to get the ball out and they try to break through Barcelona's lines, Pedri is seemingly always in the right position. And then when he does collect the ball, he either takes that quick moment, it's called the pausa, but he's able to dictate play then before Barcelona have to reset their entire possession. He's able to sit on the ball for a second there in the opponent's half of the field and slow everything down. That wasn't happening in the first half. And my biggest problem is something that is much more based on profile than it is on something that the team structurally was necessarily doing wrong. I think profile-wise, here's what wasn't working. In the rest defense, so if we kind of create a line here, in behind Lewandowski, you've got your two interiors in Olmo and Lopez. Because in that first half, it really was a 4-3-3. With Eric Garcia not having the speed to be able to drop in deep. So Eric Garcia was forced to sit much deeper behind Olmo and Lopez. And actually, he was more shading to the right side to support Fermin. Because Fermin was, I think, getting stuck in between that right line. Really wasn't making too many runs in behind to support Lamine Yamal. I mean, he had to be there, but it was much more important for him to continue to be in the middle of the field to try to recollect the ball back in case Lamine Yamal lost it or something like that. But Fermin Lopez, everything for him is always going forward, pushing forward, and that creates a lot of opportunities for Barcelona. But again, in rest defense and defending counters, now you see where that space is left in behind, because it was one pass, Kutarski, to create space in behind Lopez, and then Olmo, instead of being in a double pivot and dropping in that first half, he was much farther forward on the heat maps. And so Kutarski, again, it would be one bypass pass, or it was Pereira, one bypass pass. Suzuki, it was, if he was able to win this, it was one bypass through the middle. And all those chances that then Copenhagen were given to get past Olmo and Lopez, that's the difference here between the success of Barcelona in the second half and what they had in the first half. Because Pedri basically occupies this circle there. We'll call this the circle of influence of Pedri. That is where Pedri so often wins all of those second balls. Not necessarily just the duels, but is able to calm everything down. And again, Fermin Lopez, yeah, I did this arbitrarily, but it's no surprise that he wasn't even in my Pedri ball of influence, if you want to call it that, as one of the two interiors in front of Garcia. And for Olmo, there were times when he would drop in a little bit deeper, but then Barcelona would kind of be missing so much here because Balde was not beating his man and coming into the central channels. Raphinha was having to stretch wide to create space for Lewandowski in that five at the back. So he was just continually trying to make this run in. Very, very rarely was Raphinha in the first half coming inside. Now, if we reset things here for the second half, and we're going to sub in Bernal for Eric Garcia. One of the things that I really liked about what Barcelona did, and again, the heat maps do prove this in that second half, is that Bernal, it was kind of a double pivot, but then whenever Barcelona would get, so this was this half of the field, so Barcelona's defending half of the field, it was a double pivot. Olmo was in a bit deeper, but a lot of credit to Olmo, because then as Barcelona transitioned into that second phase of play, Olmo, once they got across midfield, would then jump up into that spot. And we saw what Bernal, one of his best skills is. It is using his big body not to defend in transition and having to make up all this space, which Eric Garcia also didn't do while running towards his own goal. But instead, Bernal is so good at being able to read the play and use his big frame and his head and whatever it is, all the things that are going up vertically in his body to then defend the space in behind Olmo and Lopez in that rest defense. So the rest defense with Bernal and that, again, that position of Olmo to drop in deeper to help with build-up, as he was doing the first half really well too, but then just push forward once they were in that final third, because you could then trust Bernal on that rest defense. It also helped in that second half. The Copenhagen was tiring quite a bit. So all of that, again, the rest defense, it sounds just like a boring concept, but it showed you the through lines of Barcelona's missing Pedri. Eric Garcia wasn't necessarily the answer to support Olmo and Lopez. It's not that Eric Garcia did anything wrong as a defensive midfielder, but especially with Martin and Eric Garcia, neither are that quick, not that agile. They were a little bit redundant in those spots. And Eric also had to take a much deeper position so that physically he could make up for that space. So this condition against that low block wasn't ideal for him in that spot behind Olmo and Lopez. And so even though it was not on purpose, Bernal had to come in because of Eric Garcia in the second half for that concussion protocol after he took the long shot to the side of the head in the first half. This change here in the second half, even by mistake, improved the rest defense and improved Barcelona completely. 180 there for the second half. Headline 3 is Lamine Yamal star boy. I can say boy because he's still very much a teenager, and the way that he navigated this match was really something special. Coming off what was a fantastic performance over the weekend, Lamine Yamal continued just to be firing on all cylinders. Passing was where it needed to be. Stuff was really, really crisp when other teammates were making those passes. But then his decision-making and his quick movements on the dribble, it changed and warped the defense that Copenhagen had. In the 48th minute, it leads to Barcelona's first goal. From their own box, though, so this is a lot of build-up from everybody else, too. At midfield, Olmo checks to the ball. So he comes in, drops in a bit deeper as Barcelona moving across midfield, like I just mentioned in that tactics board. So Fermin makes a run in front of him, while Lamine Yamal makes a run in behind. And those moves off one another were really important for Barcelona in the second half too, as Olmo picks out the pass, the right one, to Lamine Yamal, who's in behind, finds Lewandowski in the middle for the tap-in, Barcelona up 1-0. 51st minute, Olmo is now feeling himself with a little bit of confidence, creates another chance. Fermin's shot hits the side netting, and it's a really tight angle that Raphinha didn't look too happy about. At that point, it was still 1-1, I remind you. In the 59th minute, Copenhagen is offside. This game could have got a little bit dicey at this point, but they're offside. João Garcia still came up in a big way for that one to make sure it stayed off the board, so we're still at 1-1. Then the 60th minute, that thing I said about Lamine Yamal being a star boy, it wasn't actually even about that first goal. It's about the second goal. This is a lot about Lamine Yamal. It's a deflected shot, but this is Olmo again playing deeper so that Balde is able to come inside, something he didn't do in the first half, but was able to have a lot more success in beating his man in the second half. He plays off Lewandowski, that does Balde, and then Lamine Yamal does the rest. Lopez is anticipating the dribble, so he takes a step back to try to deal with it as the help defender comes over. But Lamine Yamal instead doesn't waste any time, shoots with that nice curling shot. It gets deflected, a little bit of luck, and it finds a goal. Boy, Lamine Yamal, after his scissors kick on the weekend, to follow it up with this kind of goal, this is the 2-1. This winds up being the winner, and Lamine Yamal is a star. Headline 4, Raphinha and Rashford put it away. Barcelona were not done yet. Yes, they were at that point in the top 8 because the results were going their way, but they knew they had to help themselves out with goal differential. If I'm Hansi Flick or anybody in the crowd, we're not telling any of the players, win by as many goals as possible. You make sure you secure your spot. And Barca continued to do that in the 67th minute with the 3-1. Lewandowski is fouled in the box on the shot, on the swing through, maybe a soft pen. Suzuki got him ever so slightly on the back of the ankle, but that contact did prevent the shot. So by the letter of the law, that contact was enough for the PK. Raphinha steps up to it instead of Lewandowski, knocks it into the corner. Big game, Raphinha, and it's 3-1, and Barcelona now flying high into the top 8. 72nd minute, at that point, Hansi Flick, with a team full of confidence, was able to make his subs, Rashford and Araujo for Olmo and Martin, and after that, it was Castro on for Fermin, and Torres for Lewandowski as the last sub, as Hansi Flick was able to put energy and extra legs into that game just to close things out well and not take any chances. In the 85th minute, this game was completely put on ice. The 4-1 on a free kick from Marcus Rashford. I don't say that often. A Barcelona free kick goal from Marcus Rashford got through the wall. And this is the youngster, the former Dortmund prodigy and Makuku. He didn't jump at the right time, and he let his keeper down here as this one skates just over the wall. And in the one spot where the keeper can't get to it, it's 4-1. 89th minute, this one doesn't really matter, just for posterity, because I always mention every goal that is scored. Copenhagen gets another, but it's not even counted. It's a cross in, Gabriel the back post. Cubarsí and Bernal were in the area, but nobody put a body on anybody. João Garcia went for it and didn't get to it. So what could have been mistakes, well, we got to look at it on VAR, and the man who was blocking Cubarsí and Bernal, they actually did have a man, but they were blocked off to it because he was in an offside position, so no goal. That was them trying to move forward for that offside trap, because it would have been offside, but no, instead the man was blocking them off. Then in stoppage time, Lamine Yamal goes on a wild run, and Rashford hits the crossbar on a shot, but it doesn't matter. At that point, it was 4-1, and Barcelona are now heading to the top 8. Then headline 5 is making the top 8. Here's the big picture. Barcelona started the night potentially having to play in those playoffs. And it looked like in the first half of the first 45 minutes, with those results not going Barca's way either, outside of that match, that they were going to have to play and take a chance to get through the playoff. But that didn't happen because they took care of business. They controlled their own destiny on goal differential, but results also worked out their way. So exception of missing all of you for an additional watch along and not getting to make another 5 headlines for a playoff, I'm exuberant that Barcelona look like one of those teams that can ascend to that top level. They now join Arsenal, Bayern, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea, Sporting CP, and Man City in the top 8. And to me, there's a top 1 in Arsenal, then a top 2 being created by Bayern, but then there are like 9 flawed, interesting teams that we've seen show their flaws both in their domestic campaigns as well as in the league phase of the Champions League, who I could also all see lifting that trophy. Outside of that, I'd say about 11 teams. Everybody else, I'd say, is a huge long shot, but Barcelona, I think they're in that mix of those 9 teams that have their major flaws. But Barcelona have showed you that they can pretty much outscore anybody. The difference is, with this match, and not to be cynical here, because today is a really good, positive, fun day with a positive result. But the one issue is that good teams, and we saw this against Chelsea and PSG, if you go down, good teams are not going to give you the space to come back the way that so many other teams have in the last few weeks. So that flip that keeps getting switched by Barcelona, especially in these second halves, that's just not going to happen when it comes to the best of the best in Europe. So yes, Barcelona can outscore anybody, but they've got to start these games a bit better. That's the negative side of things. But again, I am overwhelmingly positive that Barcelona look like one of the better teams, not one of the best teams, but one of the much better teams in the Champions League this season. And who knows what could happen. Their possible opponents are PSG and Newcastle or Monaco Karabakh, then some version of Liverpool, Tottenham, Atleti, Juventus, or Brugge. But let's focus on the PSG, Newcastle, or potentially a upset from Monaco Karabakh. But again, expect PSG, Newcastle, depending on the draw. They do avoid Bayern Munich or Arsenal until the semifinals. I know a lot could happen, but that's pretty good for Barcelona to avoid them until the semis. And then headline 6, I know, headline 6. We got a bonus headline today, and it is Mourinho Schadenfreude. Boy, I don't like Jose Mourinho, but boy, do I dislike Real Madrid more. And Real Madrid do not finish in the top 8. Very rarely. I always say you wait till the end, because Real Madrid, they're in the playoff, they can still win the Champions League. So of course, Madridistas, so Blancos fans, they can come back here and put a pin in this video or this podcast and yeah, let me hear it. But if you're still watching this, you're probably a Kool-Aid, and you also probably enjoy the fact that Real Madrid are going to have to face off in a playoff against another team with a manager in Arbeloa that already looks like he's out of his depth, and they're going to be doing it without Raúl Asensio or Rodrigo, who picked up late reds in that match against Benfica. This game was also capped with a keeper goal. Benfica's keeper scores the goal 4-2 that puts Real Madrid away, and Jose Mourinho against his former side. I just had to mention the scene of this final match day. And if you thought there was any chance UEFA was going to go back to a different format, no. That day, that moment, Jose Mourinho against Real Madrid, absolute scenes. It's hard to think that UEFA is going to go back to anything else for a while after seeing what happened on the final match day. Madrid will now face one of Bodo Glimt or Benfica again. Both of those would be insane fun. To me, Bodo Glimt upsetting both Atletico Madrid and Man City in the league phase, and they are one of the best sum of their parts teams in Europe I've watched in a long, long time. Look at their roster. They do not have a single young upcoming star that actually plays and will be featuring in the Champions League that's going to be poached by bigger teams. This is kind of who they are, and that is so much fun because that means that the system and the team itself has bought into that special magic that makes this game so much fun. So yes, if it is Bodo Glimt against Real Madrid, yeah, you can sign me up for that as being a Bodo Glimt fan on that day. So to recap, even after a nervy start and not a great first half, Barcelona rallied. The results went their way. They jump into the top 8, and the Champions League picture looks really interesting in a good way for Barcelona. And yes, also bonus points for a little Mourinho Schadenfreude against Real Madrid. That's a lot of fun. And also was great fun, as I said at the beginning. Thank you so much. Everybody helped me get to 100,000 subscribers. Please also continue to support me on BigUp with these watch-alongs, play those predictions games, and help me continue to make shows just like this on Patreon or the merch store. And as always, until next time for another at least till 1,000 videos or podcasts, more Barca.